With the connection set up, let's go into our models folder and there to the product.js file. And there, we can actually delete everything. We don't need all of that right now, we'll write it from scratch. Here, I first of all need to import two things. The first thing is Sequelize itself. So again, I will require Sequelize here, and that will give me back a class or constructor function, hence I name this here with a capital S. The next thing I'll import is my database connection pool managed by Sequelize. I'll also name this Sequelize, but with a lowercase s, so I'll basically import what I export in my database.js file. Here, I will import this by requiring, and then go up one level into util, and then there to the database.js file. Now, with these two things imported, we can now define a model that will be managed by Sequelize. So here in this file below my imports, I'll create a new constant and I'll name it product, because in the product.js file, I want to define my product model. Now, this model is not defined as a class as we did it before, but instead I use Sequelize with the lowercase s, so my database connection pool, which is more than a connection pool, it's actually a fully configured Sequelize environment, which does also have the connection pool, but also all the features of the Sequelize package. And there we can define a new model by calling define. The first name then is the model name. And by the way, here in the suggestion, you also see an example and so on, as you do in the official docs, of course. Now, the model name typically is a lowercase name, and I'll name it product like this. You are free to name this however you want, but to follow along smoothly, I recommend taking this name. The second argument defines the structure of our model and therefore also of the automatically created database table. This will be a JavaScript object, and in there we simply define the attributes or fields our product should have. For example, I want to have an ID. Now, an ID is then in turn defined with an object where I configure this attribute. There, for example, we set the type, and the type is now one of the types defined by the Sequelize package. So now I use Sequelize with a capital S, so from this import here, and there you find a bunch of types like number or string, so not varchar and so on, but here you have the more JavaScriptish names I would say. And I want to use an integer here, because my ID will be a number starting at 1 and then incrementing. To make it increment, I also configure this attribute to be auto-incrementing by setting auto-increment to true. And in case you're wondering how I do know all of that, well, again, you find that in the official docs. On docs.sequelizejs.com, you can dive into Sequelize, learn more about how it works and how you can configure it, and under model definition, you'll learn all about how to define a model, how you can define your different tags for the model, and you'll also see a list of all the supported data types, like the integer we just used. So this is where you can learn more about this. And I can tell you that I want this to be auto-incrementing, so I will set auto-increment to null, to true. I also don't want to allow this value to be empty, so I will set allow null to false, because I don't want to allow null values in there. Last but not least, I'll set primary key to true to basically define this as the primary key of the table, which is an important concept in SQL databases for retrieving the data and then also for later defining relations. With that defined, a product of course also has other fields, for example a title. Now we can again define a JavaScript object to configure it in detail, or if you just want to set the type, you can also use Sequelize and then the type. So this is a shortcut in case you only want to set the type. Though you could argue that we also at least want to set that this should never be null, but here as a demo, I will just assign the type. For the price, I'll go back to the JavaScript object and set the type to Sequelize and then double. And I will again set allow null to false to not allow null values here. Then I will set my image URL here, again to a JavaScript object, where I set the type to Sequelize string, and I will set allow null to false to not allow null values here. And last but not least, I also want to have a description, which also will have a type that is of type sequelize string, and I will set allow null to false. Now this is my product model. Last but not least, we need to export it. So below my model definition here, I'll simply use module exports and export my product here. So this constant in which I define a stored defined model, this gets exported here. And with that, we made a huge step forward and we can now start using this product. Now let's see how we use it over the next lectures.